What happens when a car company decides to sell $100,000 SUVs to people who can barely afford $30,000 cars? Disaster. That's exactly what Stellantis did with the Grand Wagoneer, and now they're paying the price. Dealerships are drowning in unsold inventory, unions are threatening strikes, and the company's future hangs by a thread. Let's break down this $100,000 mistake. Look at this. Stellantis thought it was smart to focus on fancy rides like the Grand Wagoneer. But here's the thing, they missed the mark big time. Picture a Jeep dealership that used to be bustling with customers. Now, it's a ghost town with rows of shiny, overpriced SUVs collecting dust. What's happening is a huge disconnect between what Stellantis thinks people can afford and what they actually can. The average Joe isn't lining up to drop $100K on a car. And it's not just about unsold cars. This mess is hitting dealerships hard. Workers are getting nervous, and Stellantis? Well, they're in for a wild ride. Stick around, and I'll show you just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Remember when car lots were empty during the pandemic? Now it's the complete opposite. Dealerships are bursting at the seams with unsold cars. But here's the kicker. Some of these new cars are pushing 3 years old. How did Stellantis go from not enough cars to way too many? Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a Stellantis dealership lot. It's packed to the brim with shiny new Jeeps, Rams, and yes, those $100,000 Grand Wagoneers. But look closer. You'll see 2022 models sitting next to 2023S and even some 2024S. It's like a time capsule of cars. And it's causing big problems. Check this out. Stellantis just reported a 48% drop in net income. That's not a typo. Nearly half their profits gone. And it gets worse. Ram sales down 26%. Jeep? They're not doing much better with a 19% decline. These aren't just numbers on a page. They're a sign that something's seriously wrong. Now let's talk about inventory. Stellantis dealers are sitting on a 77-day supply of vehicles. That might not sound like much, but trust me, it's bad. Last year it was 59 days. That extra 18 days? It's costing dealers big time. Here's the thing. Dealers have to pay for all those cars sitting on their lots. It's called floor plan costs. Every day a car doesn't sell, it's like throwing money out the window. And with 3 model years worth of inventory, some dealers are drowning in debt. I talked to a dealer friend of mine, let's call him Mike. He told me, dude, I've got more cars than I know what to do with. Stellantis keeps pushing inventory, but nobody's buying. I'm paying interest on cars I can't sell, and it's killing me. You'd think Stellantis would be throwing incentives at dealers to help move these cars, right? Wrong. They're leaving dealers high and dry. Mike said he wouldn't take more inventory even if Stellantis offered it for free. That's how bad it is. And it's not just Mike. Dealers across the country are feeling the squeeze. Some are on the brink of bankruptcy. They're watching their profits shrink by 33% compared to last year. That's a third of their income, gone. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that quote about Stellantis laying off executives? Well, it's not just suits in offices losing their jobs. The whole company seems to be on shaky ground. One dealer even said, it seems like all their brands, including Jeep, might be going under sometime soon. That's a big statement from someone in the know. So what are dealers doing to stay afloat? They're getting creative. Many are shifting focus to used cars. It's like they're going back to basics, selling what people can actually afford. Because let's face it, in this economy, a $100,000 SUV is a tough sell. This whole situation is a perfect storm. You've got a car company pushing expensive vehicles, dealers drowning in inventory, and customers tightening their belts. It's a recipe for disaster, and we're seeing it play out in real time. Now take all those problems we just talked about and multiply them by 100. Because Stellantis isn't just dealing with too many cars. They're facing a workforce that's mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. What happens when the assembly lines grind to a halt? Let me show you something that'll blow your mind. The UAW, that's the United Auto Workers Union, has 98% of its members covered under grievances against Stellantis. That's not a typo. We're talking about almost every single worker ready to walk out. This isn't just a little workplace squabble, it's a powder keg waiting to explode. So what's got these workers so riled up? Well, it's a whole bunch of things. First off, Stellantis promised a big investment in a new battery plant. Sounds great, right? But they've been dragging their feet and the workers are losing patience. Then there's the Dodge Durango. Word on the street is Stellantis might move production out of the US. You can bet that's not sitting well with American workers. Here's the thing, Stellantis is playing a dangerous game. They're not confirming or denying these rumors about moving production. It's like they're trying to keep everyone guessing. But all it's doing is making the union angrier. Now, imagine what happens if these workers actually go on strike. We're talking about a complete shutdown of production. Remember all those unsold cars sitting on dealer lots? Well, they might be the only new Stellantis vehicles available for a while. The union president, Shawn Fain, he's not messing around. He says Stellantis is at its weakest point right now. And you know what that means? The UAW is ready to strike while the iron is hot. They're looking to squeeze every concession they can out of Stellantis. But here's where it gets really interesting. These grievances aren't just about money or benefits. The workers are saying Stellantis broke promises they made in the last contract. We're talking about product commitments, investment plans, the whole 9 yards. And when you break a promise to 98% of your workforce, that's a recipe for disaster. Look at it this way. Stellantis is already struggling to sell cars. Now they might not even be able to make them. It's like they're getting hit from all sides. Unsold inventory piling up, angry workers ready to strike, and a union that smells blood in the water. And you know who's caught in the middle of all this? The dealerships. These guys are already drowning in unsold inventory. Now they're facing the possibility of not getting any new cars at all if a strike happens. It's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Check this out. Carlos Tavares, the big boss at Stellantis, he's talking about needing to cut costs. But how do you cut costs when your workers are ready to walk out? It's like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. So what's the end game here? Well, if Stellantis can't smooth things over with the union, we might see some of the longest and most damaging strikes in auto industry history. And that's not just bad news for Stellantis. It's bad news for everyone who relies on these cars, from dealers to customers to entire communities built around these factories. While workers are ready to walk, the big boss at Stellantis is playing a high-stakes game of corporate Jenga. One wrong move, and the whole thing comes crashing down. What's his next play? The answer might surprise you, and it's got everyone from factory workers to Wall Street suits on edge. Let me introduce you to Carlos Tavares, the CEO of Stellantis. This guy's got a problem bigger than a monster truck rally. He's looking at his company and seeing red, not just in the paint jobs, but in the books. Tavares is saying they need to cut costs, and fast. But how do you trim the fat when you're already down to the bone? Here's the thing. Tavares is talking about shutting down brands that aren't making money. Can you imagine? Whole car lines just gone. It's like he's playing a real-life version of which car stays and which car goes. But it's not a game. People's jobs are on the line. Check this out. Stellantis is offering buyout packages to their white-collar workers. That's right. They're paying people to leave. It's like they're trying to bail water out of a sinking ship by throwing the crew overboard. But here's the kicker. Even that might not be enough. Tavares is worried Stellantis might become a global case study in corporate mismanagement. Those are his words, not mine. When the big boss is talking like that, you know things are serious. It's like he's looking at a car wreck in slow motion, and he can't figure out how to hit the brakes. Now let's talk about electric cars for a second. Tavares is scratching his head over this one. He's saying people want to buy electric cars at the same price as regular cars. But here's the problem. That math doesn't add up. It's like trying to sell a Rolls-Royce at Honda prices. Something's got to give. Look at what's happening with their strategy. Stellantis thought they could sell fancy cars to folks who are barely scraping by. It's like trying to sell ice to Eskimos, except the ice costs as much as a house. Now they've got dealerships full of cars nobody wants to buy. So what's Tavares going to do? He's got workers ready to strike, dealerships drowning in unsold cars, and a market that's changing faster than he can keep up. It's like he's trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a roller coaster. Here's where it gets really tricky. Every decision Tavares makes is going to have a ripple effect. Shut down a brand? That's entire towns losing their main employer. Cut production? That's suppliers going out of business. Keep pushing expensive cars? That's dealers closing up shop. So Stellantis is in a tight spot, and guess who shows up with a billion-dollar band-aid? The government. But hold on a second. Why are they still talking about layoffs if they're getting all this cash? Something doesn't add up here, and it's got everyone from the factory floor to Wall Street scratching their heads. Look at this. The feds are throwing over $1 billion at Stellantis to help them switch to electric vehicles. Sounds like a sweet deal, right? But here's the thing. It might not be enough to save the day. Stellantis is still offering buyouts to their office workers. That's like getting a big bonus at work and then asking your coworkers if they want to quit. Carlos Tavares, the big boss at Stellantis, he's not sugarcoating things. He says the real problem with electric cars is that people can't afford them. It's like trying to sell a Ferrari to someone who's shopping for a used Honda. The math just doesn't work. Now, let's talk about what this billion-dollar boost really means. Stellantis has to use that money to make new electric cars and change their factories. That's not cheap. It's like trying to renovate your whole house with the budget for a new kitchen. Something's got to give. Here's where it gets tricky. Even with all that government cash, Stellantis might still lose money in the short term. It's like they're trying to dig themselves out of a hole, but the shovel costs more than the dirt they're moving. They're spending big bucks now, hoping it'll pay off later. But what if it doesn't? Check this out. The UAW president, Shawn Fain, he's not pulling any punches. He says Stellantis is turning into a global case study in corporate mismanagement. That's a fancy way of saying they're messing up big time. And this is coming from the guy who represents the workers. If he's saying it, you know things are bad. So what's the deal with electric cars? Tavares says they're the future, but people want them at regular car prices. That's like expecting to buy a smartphone for the price of a flip phone. It just doesn't work that way. Stellantis is caught between what people want and what they can actually make money selling. Now, let's think about what this all means for Stellantis. They've got a few ways this could go down. Best case, they use that government money to make affordable electric cars that people actually want to buy. They turn things around and come out stronger. But there's a flip side. What if they can't make it work? We could be looking at more layoffs, maybe even some brands disappearing completely. Here's the thing. Stellantis isn't just fighting against other car companies. They're fighting against time. The world is changing fast and they need to catch up. It's like they're trying to win a race in a car that's still being built. Can they pull it off? That's the billion-dollar question. What's happening with Stellantis isn't just about one company. It's about the whole car industry. If Stellantis can't make this work, it could change everything. From what kind of cars we drive to how much they cost. And it's not just about cars. It's about jobs, towns, and the whole economy. Let me paint you a picture. Remember that bustling car dealership down the street? The one that sponsored your kid's Little League team? Well, it might not be there much longer. And it's not just about cars anymore. It's about survival. The ripple effect of Stellantis' troubles is hitting home, literally. Look at what's happening in towns across America. Stellantis dealerships are major employers, and when they struggle, the whole community feels it. We're talking about job losses, empty storefronts, and local economies taking a nosedive. It's like watching a domino effect in slow motion. Here's the thing. It's not just the dealerships. Think about all the businesses that rely on them. The local diner where the salespeople grab lunch, the print shop that makes their brochures, the car wash down the street. When a big player like Stellantis stumbles, it's like pulling a Jenga block from the bottom of the tower. Check this out. As these high-priced cars sit unsold, people are turning to more affordable options. Used cars are hot right now. It's like everyone suddenly realized they don't need a $100,000 SUV to get to work. This shift is changing the whole landscape of car buying in America. But here's where it gets tricky. Dealerships are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've got lots full of expensive cars nobody wants, and they're paying through the nose to keep them there. Some are even thinking about selling at a loss just to clear the lot. It's like they're having the world's worst yard sale. Now let's talk about financing. With car prices and interest rates through the roof, getting a loan is tougher than ever. More people are getting turned down, and those who already have loans? Some of them can't keep up with the payments. We're seeing a spike in repossessions. It's like the American dream is getting repoed along with those cars. So what's a buyer to do? People are getting creative. They're looking for deals, hunting for discounts, anything to make those car payments manageable. It's putting pressure on dealerships to lower prices or offer incentives. The whole sticker price game is changing. But here's the kicker. This mess isn't just Stellantis' problem anymore. It's becoming everyone's problem. When a big company like this struggles, it sends shockwaves through the whole industry. Other car makers are watching closely, wondering if they might be next. So what can we do about all this? Well, if you're in the market for a car, keep your eyes open for deals. Dealerships are desperate to move inventory, so you might score a bargain. But remember, a deal's only good if you can afford the payments long term. For communities feeling the pinch, it's time to get creative. Maybe those empty dealership lots can be repurposed. Pop-up markets, community events, anything to keep the local economy moving. It's like turning lemons into lemonade, but on a town-wide scale. And if you're worried about your local businesses, now's the time to show some love. Shop local when you can. Every little bit helps keep these communities afloat while they weather this storm. All right, let's wrap this up. Stellantis is in deep trouble. They've got too many expensive cars nobody wants, workers ready to strike, and a CEO who's running out of options. It's not just about Stellantis anymore. This mess is affecting whole communities. Here's the thing. Stellantis could go bankrupt, or they might pull off a miracle and turn things around. Either way, it's going to change the car industry. We're talking about job losses, dealerships closing, and maybe even some car brands disappearing. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you're thinking about buying a car, keep your eyes open. There might be some deals out there, but be smart about it. Don't stretch yourself too thin. Look, the American car industry is changing fast. Will companies like Stellantis survive? Or are we looking at a future where American-made cars are a thing of the past? That's the big question. And I don't think anyone has the answer just yet.